Thousands of civilians are trying to flee the city of Sirte in Libya, where fierce fighting between pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces continues. Now, on Friday, former rebels launched a barrage of rockets at the colonel's home city. And as Suad Missoudi from the Red Cross in Tripoli told RT, the fighting and the dire shortage of essentials are forcing people to leave.
About the situation in Sirte, we have heard accounts of IDPs, about water and electricity being cut off, and a lot of difficulties with the water supplies, with access to food and access to medical supplies and medical health services. We have not been able to have guarantees from all the sides, all the parties to the conflict. So we have no idea of what's going on right now in the city of Sirte, unfortunately. What we do know is that there are a lot of IDPs coming out. People are fleeing from the city of Sirte, passing through Zdata Bridge, and many of these IDPs have chosen to remain around as closely as possible to their hometown. They are living in difficult conditions. There are a lot of children and women, also pregnant women, who have difficult access to medical care. So the situation is dire. We are very concerned, especially about their health situation right now.
All right, well, more reaction now. The deputy editor of the independent online political magazine Spiked, Rob Lyons, is in London. Mr. Lyons, from what we're hearing from Sirte, it sounds like a full-scale humanitarian crisis. Where is the international community to that?
Well, I mean, this is the inevitable consequence of the things that they got rolling back in February. That a kind of half-hearted intervention was always going to end up with a kind of last stand by Gaddafi's forces. In fact, this is the kind of last stand that we expected in Tripoli a few weeks ago that never happened, and clearly there's a last stand now. And the thing about the role of the international community now could be making things worse, not simply by bombarding the city, but by actually having made such a fuss about civilians not being injured or hurt, even though they clearly have been. But by saying that, it's given the Gaddafi forces a real incentive to keep those civilians in the city, probably against their will. I'm sure many of them would like to get out of there now, but they effectively become a kind of shield by which they can stay there for a bit longer.
Yeah, so talking about these casualties, I mean, the city is under constant NATO bombardments, and we hear that the casualties are mounting, as you yourself has mentioned. Going back again to that original mandate, where does this sit with that mandate of protecting civilians, if at all?
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that if you're going to have a military intervention in somewhere, you can't declare that you're going to protect civilians in that way. But the best thing that NATO could have done in a way was either just not get involved, which would be my preference, I have to say, or to be decisive about that involvement. But what they did was, it was quite clear that having been through the process with Iraq and Afghanistan, they were very unwilling to get involved in any kind of serious way, put boots on the ground and that kind of thing. And so we had a long, drawn-out conflict, which didn't need to be that drawn. Once you take away the air power, Gaddafi's forces were always going to be much weaker. And but by always emphasising that this was a humanitarian intervention, that civilians weren't going to get hurt, actually in the long run probably more civilians got hurt as a result of that.
And speaking of drawn out, I mean, we heard the Libyan National Transitional Council saying that it will not form an interim government until the whole country is liberated. I mean, that is rather vague given the situation. How long do you think that will take?
Well, that could be as long as a piece of string, really. I mean, there's places in the south that are going to take quite a while to liberate. Sirte could take a long time to liberate, as in their terms as well, because as long as there are civilians in there, as long as the Gaddafi forces have now got nowhere else to go, they've got no interest in kind of running away. So we could be in for a really long stalemate. But it gives more time for this kind of sense of uncertainty about exactly what the political future of Libya is going to be.
Okay, and now it's been 6 months. I mean, half a year after Libya's conflict broke out. It's now that the U.S. and its allies have decided to take a closer look at those anti-Gaddafi leaders that they had previously backed unconditionally. I mean, this has been brought up sporadically in the past, and now they're fearing Islamic extremism. Do you think it's a bit too late for that now?
Well, I mean, even if these leaders weren't, Islamic extremists, I mean, many of these are old Gaddafi people that simply fell out with Gaddafi in the past. We have no idea really who these people are. And the point is, they weren't picked by the Libyan people. They were picked by the West, and they owe their allegiance now to the West. They're kind of the kind of puppet regime in a way. Their place in power, the fact that they've got a seat at the UN, the fact that they run the embassies now in these various different countries, the fact that they're recognised, that's all come from the West. It hasn't come from the Libyan people. So regardless of who they are, whether this really represents a step forward for Libyans is still very much open to question.
All right, thanks very much for your analysis there. Rob Lyons, Deputy Editor of the independent online political magazine Spiked, talking to us live from London. Thank you.